What makes a good influencer marketing partnership?
Good question. I think that there's a bunch of different factors that you have to think about. You have to understand there's actually a bunch of different types of these collaborations. The first is brand partnerships, which generally are longer term, used across all social media platforms, and then an influencer will appear in several different campaigns, and they're also likely to make a personal appearance on behalf of the brand itself. So they become the face of the brand. Tina Fey and Bookings.com, or like Zendaya and On, for example. Then the second is effectively co-branding, which is where a brand and an influencer, or a brand and another brand, will create a new product together that reflects both the brands' and maybe the brand and influencer style. So like Skims and North Face, for example. The third and final one is just like a brand collaboration. And this is the one I see most often, and it's the most common one. And this is probably like a short-lived, most likely single campaign that airs on a specific platform, doesn't involve a huge amount of personal appearances on behalf of the brand, and no kind of personal or influencer to brand kind of representation. Now, there are three main factors which lead to the success of one of these types of collaborations. The first one is whether they're credible. So a partnership where you can truly see the brand and influencer working together as they're aligned on their underlying missions and their operating values. The second one is whether it's believable. So partnerships where the timing is right and they truly co-created together and you can see the influence of both brands or both influencer and brand in the final product or the campaign. And the third one is going to be whether it actually value adds to the customer. So it's not just a kind of a profit play, but in fact, they've created something novel, unique, and desirable that adds value to the consumer. It could be physically, whether it looks amazing, or psychologically, whether it makes you feel amazing and like happy. Then, once you've sorted that out, the next step is to decide what the objective of the campaign is. The first one being you want to create consumer demand. It's quite an obvious one, by introducing one audience to another audience, which they might not necessarily be the same audience beforehand. Example of this could be like Rimowa being introduced to the Supreme audience and Supreme being introduced to the Rimowa audience. The likelihood is that a very high proportion of Gen Z has never heard of Rimowa before Supreme, especially at the age of people who were buying Supreme at the time. They really didn't understand what kind of high-end luxury suitcases were. Another example of that would be like Jack Daniels and Coke. So a lot of young people who are drinking Coke, a Jack Daniels bottle was something you saw on like your granddad's shelf, but you never really considered it to be something that you could drink casually or in a young, fun manner. Whereas when then Coke bought Jack Daniels and made the little black canned drinks of Jack Daniels and Coke, that then merged those two audiences. Now, the second type is increasing an existing consumer demand, where the audiences know about each other, but you're just bringing them together anyways. So like Crocs and Palace, or Crocs and Balenciaga. From a music side, you have Crocs and Bad Bunny, Crocs and Post Malone. I realized Crocs have done quite a lot of these. The audience crossover is super high. So your goal is to increase existing consumer demand, but it's probably not going to reach a huge amount of new audience, but it's still a novel thing nonetheless. Now, there's an important note to make here about brand or influencer collaborations. They're great for building awareness and can be used really successfully for older, high-quality brands, especially ones that Gen Z have never been introduced to, because heritage brands don't appear anywhere in this kind of Gen Z shopping market. The final point I want to make, and arguably most importantly, is that in the case of Rimowa and Supreme, or Jack Daniels and Coke, both Rimowa and Jack Daniels use popular Gen Z brands to gateway into kind of being introduced to young people's audiences. And they both did that super successfully. So my point is that collaborations should not be confused with a business model. This is not like a strategy, but it's a short-lived, timely kind of idea that opens up opportunities for future long-term businesses and building strategy around Gen Z. But influencer collaborations should not be part of your strategy, but more of a way to get to Gen Z, and then you can build your strategy around keeping them.